Hey, Brandon, welcome to the show. As way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. Good to be here. I think that, well, if we could talk about a lot of different things, we could talk about sales, we could talk about who I am, but let me go back to who Brandon Pickworth is,
That'd be
the
helpful.
person. Yeah, yeah. Married, live in Columbus, Ohio, have three kids, two girls and a boy. I've been in sales for quite some time, ever since really I can remember. Started off, I think, having a simple paper route
Yeah.
back in back in the day, back in the 80s.
Well, that's it. The family guys, you really don't have to ask what motivates them.
Yeah, yeah. Believe me, there's enough motivation right
There's
now.
another, every time you go home, you're motivated.
Right, exactly. What did you sell today?
Right.
Yeah.
It's the single guys you have to worry about. It's like,
Exactly. Exactly.
how'd you get into sales?
Well, I think having the opportunity to earn some commission, just coins from the paper route, sort of
Yeah.
set off this
Yeah.
I don't know, wheel in motion. I think I won a 10-speed bicycle
Yeah.
as my first real commission for winning a contest at a paper route, and I knew that there was this knack that I had for getting people to say yes, and that made me feel good, and it brought them something, and so there was sort of a mutual exchange there. And I think innately, I always just sort of gravitated to being a provider of solutions.
And, I had that same experience. And what it meant to me was kind of a sense of independence that you didn't have to ask your parents to
Right.
buy something.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And as a kid, that is such a great feeling.
And bikes back then were everything to a kid,
Oh, yeah.
you
so,
know.
so you get the 5-year-old rusted hand-me-down, or you go work and get a nice new one.
That's right. That's right. Don't touch my spokes. Very protective of the bike, and that was the commission, and that motivated me to just continue down that path. And I've had numerous sales positions in my life, and there was a period in time where I don't know if I had reconciled the fact that I was going to be a professional salesman, because it was hard to define. It was such a fluid profession. You could do all kinds of things and still be in sales. And then the question philosophically is always, aren't we all salespeople in some regard, right?
Yeah. And
So
what was your first B2B role?
yeah, I think my first B2B role, really, if you want to talk true B2B, was a couple years ago. So right now I work for a venture-backed, Series A funded startup. The name of the company is called Aware. And I was in the startup community a couple years ago, and it really started in 2017 when I came on board with a company called Olive that really provided an artificial intelligence solution to healthcare systems. And that was truly B2B, where I was working with C-level executives within the healthcare system, and there were many, many different parts of the sales process, and that was something that I just didn't understand before I got there, even all the way up to that point, because I was working in medical device. And as much as people want to say that could be enterprise sales or B2B, it's really, in medical device, you're one-to-one with the surgeon.
With the decision maker. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was different when I came to Olive, and now with Aware, still very similar, B2B, multiple champions, multiple stakeholders, different business units, all
Yeah.
across verticals. I mean, it's all the things, right?
Well, that's it, because, I kind of grew up in the complex sale. And when you talk about it, if people aren't in the complex, they don't know what you're talking about.
No, no, they
They're
don't.
like, no, you just, you schmooze them, you show them how good
No,
it is, you
yeah,
work, you get the price they want, all
yeah,
the issues, and boom, you're done.
yeah.
And then you move to the complex sale, and it's like, well, who are you? Who's this person coming in? You can't say yes.
The thing with me was I was in total denial. So I was trying to break into I wanted to get into the tech startup world in Columbus. I just
Yeah.
wanted to be a part of something where I was transforming an industry, right? And I refuse to believe whenever anybody told me that, hey, you need experience before. It's the catch-22 in sales, right? It's like, we can't hire you unless you have experience. Well, the question is, how do I get experience?
That's right. Yeah. I don't know.
Right.
Somewhere else.
Sell copiers, and people do those things
Yeah.
that can potentially align you with an enterprise sale. But once I broke in, by simply connecting with the CEO, and I engaged with some of his content on LinkedIn and was having real dialogue. And then he brought me in and said, "Who is this guy? And let's bring him in." So the recruiters were saying no, the HR folks were saying no to me. Everybody was shutting the door, and I just didn't believe that I didn't have what it takes to move a deal from a very nascent idea all the way through multiple decision makers and then to close. And it happened.
Yeah.
So,
And what gave you that confidence?
that's a good question. I think it was less confidence, probably more just
Naivete.
naivete, because there was always this thing that I was after. I was always after success, how I defined what success was for myself and my family. And in order to achieve certain levels of financial gain, and in order to impact the world in which I wanted to do, this was a path to get me there. So I literally, Brian, paid no mind to what even people within the company, to what they said in terms of, hey, you're just not cut out for this yet. And here we are a few years later.
Well, that's right. Because how do you get cut out for it? And you made that point. It's like somebody has to give you a break.
Yeah.
And, the recruiters aren't going to do it for you. They want the route of least resistance.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the people that I hear who get into companies, they talk to the decision maker, the hiring manager, the CEO. And believe me, you will get an audience.
Yeah, you will.
In the old fashioned handwritten letter, well, definitely, because they're like, what the hell is this? They look at their clock and look at the calendar, and it's like, this is not 1992.
This happened to me several times in my sales career. If I were to say anything to your audience, Brian, I would say to never accept the rejection, maybe learn from it and pivot and see if we can maybe take an indirect approach and flank and try all these different techniques. But I would encourage the listeners here that despite the economy, despite any social issues or any, the pandemic, for example, or anything else that could be considered a block or a roadblock, begin with the end in mind, and let's figure out how to get through to the ultimate goal, which is to land that position or to close that account or meet the right person.
And I think you're right, because too many people focus on what's in the way instead of what do you want.
That's right.
Because there's always going to be something in the way.
That's right. Always.
There's no loss of that.
Yeah, that's in abundance.
Yeah. Right? And what was it like doing your first enterprise deals?
Well, I'll say this, is that I had one enterprise deal that took me about 18 months to close. And when I closed that, I was also serving the role of sales development director, which I had built out and spun up an entire sales development team. And at the same time, I was also working this massive enterprise deal. And it took a very, very excruciatingly long time. And people had given up internally within my company. They had, it was considered dead. But I never once gave it up, because it was such a big thing to prove to myself that we could land this account. And we did, by the way, we did. And we were working through champions. We were finding out new things along the way. I was stubbing my toe. I was getting disappointed. I was, blood, sweat, and tears was the legitimate thing. So it was an excruciatingly rewarding process.
Yeah. Oh, how big was it? Can you share general?
It was $1 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Biggest deal in your career?
Biggest deal in my career.
Probably biggest deal in the company's history.
It was I would say, I think number two or three at the time. We had landed we had started with the trajectory of landing $1 million accounts. And I'll say this, the thing about tech startup world is that, you got to prove concept, you got to get market fit. You have to really test and validate all these different things. And so for a while we were, selling our product for 20,000, and then we were selling it for 40,000, and then we were, we think maybe we could do 150,000, and then it got more complex, and the scope got bigger. So then we started charging up into the millions. And today at Aware, we're writing contracts from $50,000 all the way up into the millions now. Yeah. And that was something that the account that we ended up securing was something I just never lost sight of. I thought about it all the time. And you know what else, Brian, is that it wasn't just me. One thing I learned about the enterprise sale was it required a team.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't just me anymore. There was no more like me. It was all about, can I leverage our solutions architects? Can I leverage some of the engineers? Can I get my COO on it? Can I get another AE in on it who might have a different way of delivering a message that perhaps some people like him or her better than me? And that's okay. The important thing is that we moved the deal across the finish line. And it wasn't about me at that point being right. It was about all of us winning.
And that's what a lot of reps think, that they have to be, quarterback, run back, blocking. Yeah. And not in the enterprise deal, small transactional things. Mm-hmm. And I think that the client appreciates it too, because what they see is you now part of their team.
That's right.
Versus a vendor.
Yeah.
Huge difference.
I remember when the light bulb moment for this account, which is a world-renowned account. And I remember I was in a boardroom meeting with their CFO, with a few other players at the table. And then I had my CEO with me, which added some weight to the meeting, and then a few other folks. And it was more about truly partnering with the organization and finding a way in which we could help them achieve their ROI and then help them transform. And once we dialed into that, it was less us kicking the can down the road and saying, hey, here are our features and benefits. It was more about how can we truly partner. Right. And that's when the magic really started to happen.
Yeah, you get away from if we're going to do it and move into how are we going to do it.
Yeah.
Which is a huge difference.
Yeah.
Now, why did you leave Olive?
Well, I left Olive on excellent terms. We got to the point, and it was sad for me because, again, you pour yourself into something, you lay it out there on the table. And now Olive is doing so well. I'm very proud of what they've accomplished. They've raised millions and millions of dollars now up to this point. And what we were able to accomplish was I spun up the sales development team. We had essentially penetrated the market that we were after. So we were going after organizations that were $1 billion in revenue plus. So the Mayo Clinics, the Cleveland Clinics, the Mass Generals, the big organizations. Wow. Once my team had essentially exhausted that entire pipeline and funnel and gave the account executives enough pipeline to really chew on and move through to close, in which we did, there wasn't really any place for me to go. My option was to go either up or out. Yeah. And I had the help and the support of our executive team. And I ended up landing this position with Aware, who they needed some help spinning up a business development division. And now we're doing some really amazing things with organizations like Slack and Microsoft Teams and Yammer and Workplace from Facebook. So it's a lot of fun.
And when you say business development, is it that you're using them as a channel, or help us understand that?
Absolutely. So my job primarily is to really exemplify the role of the cold outreach specialist. It's not a pretty job, right? But it's one that's needed, especially in an industry where, you're not well known yet. So my job really is to build out a team that creates, market presence and hopefully omnipresence, and to be everywhere. And we're working across a lot of different verticals, but mainly in highly regulated industries like finance and healthcare.
The easy ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Piece of cake.
The people who love talking to salespeople.
If, right. Oh my God. Yeah. We could talk a lot about that, but yeah, so that's what my role there is now. And I work closely with the current account executives who are really taking the handoff of a qualified lead opportunity all the way through to close one, working closely with marketing, working closely with customer success, working closely with our executive team, and truly building out an organization. So we're between Series A and B right now.
And how does that feel to you? Do you feel at home there? Because it's not like a hunting, it's more of a developing and more
Yeah.
strategic than tactical.
Yeah, I would say that I've been called at times a lot more tactical than strategic. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but I've learned in B2B now. So I came from that
Yeah.
really tactical hand-to-hand world. And then in B2B, you kind of hone these strategic behaviors, which is, thinking through, all the different people that you're going to be contacting with all the different tailored messaging. I do feel at home. I feel like aware they needed someone like me to help them build out this function because they have the product. They have something truly transformative. They have world-class marketing organization. They have super smart data science people. Their executives are great, but they were missing that piece that basically, Brian, what I can do and what I could do for them is to help them break in anywhere,
Yeah.
despite the economy. And so that's what I'm doing.
So,
Breaking in.
I mean, when you smile like that, you must like that challenge.
I love it.
Because most people would like, let's go easy to hard, not hard to easy.
Yeah, I love it. It does get me out of bed in the morning. The one account that I'd landed at my previous job that I was so proud of, that where the entire team got together and we eventually closed it, that came from breaking in. Relationships that I have with some people out there in the world, that, you would think, how did Brandon, secure this deal, or how did Brandon meet this person, came from me breaking in. And
Yeah.
it just requires, again, constantly thinking about what you're trying to achieve in the mission. And that's all I think about. I think about it all day, every day. And I love it. Yeah.
And so what's your secret sauce when you're trying to get into a new account?
Yeah, it's yeah, which I could tell you. I think
You have to kill me.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of different ways to go about getting, the diamonds. I think there are two components. One component is that you need the ones that aren't diamonds. So you need a lot of those, right, in one hand. And then on the other hand, you need to be striving for the diamonds. And the approach can be different. It can be the same. I prefer a top-down approach. I like targeting conversations with executive level folks. I like talking with leaders. I feel that if they're on board with what we're trying to accomplish at Aware, then the likelihood of us proliferating throughout the organization is so much higher, as opposed to, speaking with someone who's a real champion. Maybe they're a manager of a particular business unit, but it's, we're crossing a lot of red tape at that point.
Yeah. And how do you do it? Do you network your way there? Do you?
I do it all. So I leverage tools like LinkedIn, like you're doing. I think that's an extremely effective tool. We do a lot of cold calling, although we don't like to. That's what it is, right? So we're performing outreach throughout the day. We're emailing. So I try to really canvas an account, let's say, with a lot of different angles. Not a big believer in going direct head on. I do like what I call flanking, or maybe the indirect approach.
Yeah.
But it's we'll identify a couple stakeholders that we want to have a discussion with, and we'll try every method possible.
And what turns you on about it is that it's hard and that you're able to do it and that other people aren't?
Yeah, I think so. Am I allowed to say that on here?
No, that's
Is this
good.
thing on? Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I mean,
because when you were talking before, it reminded me, I had, this big deal. We were competing against somebody who was 100 times bigger than us. And I brought my CEO in, who was very technical. We had like this 2-hour meeting. And at the end, we're out in the parking lot and he goes, they're never going to buy a thing. That's what he told me.
come on.
Nothing fired me up more than to prove him wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
so 3 months later, he called me and goes, what changed? I go, nothing.
Nothing changed. I just got after it. That's what I did.
Right. It's like, they're not talking to us to not buy.
That's right. That's right. And see, to be successful in anything, you have to have that mentality. And I think there is a chill button, right? I mean, I'm not always on level 11, but at the same time, again, I don't lose sight of what the ultimate goal is. And you're right. I do like accomplishing things that maybe some people are saying you can't do. I'll tell you what, a big learning experience for me was I didn't really have, and then what put me in a leadership position at Olive and at Aware was I didn't really have strong leadership in medical device. In previous positions, I had leaders that really, I mean, if people heard some of the things that I was taught back in the day, it would just be, lawsuits all over the place, right? Yeah. So it wasn't nothing PC, but I didn't have great leadership. And it was a mission of mine to say, I am not going to be like that guy or that person. I'm going to be this type of person. Yeah. And I'm going to help people get to the solutions that they're trying to achieve. And I want people that are working around me, Brian, to feel more confident. I want people that are associated with me to feel like, damn, what, I feel great. I feel like I can run through that door too. I feel like I can get that meeting. I feel like we can close this thing. I feel like we can change the world in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're much more into the art than the brute force.
I think so. Even though some people would say that, Brandon, we think he's great at playing checkers, but since right, because in checkers you're
tic-tac-toe.
you're one-to-one. Yeah. You're one-to-one instead of thinking about the 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 moves ahead.
Yeah.
And that's what you really start picking up in the enterprise game is the strategy piece, the pieces, the chess game.
Yeah. And so are you looking to build a team? Are you looking to just be?
Yeah, no, the purpose that there's a lot of resources put behind me. Thankfully, very grateful for, the team at Aware and for what Olive did for me. Those companies changed my life effectively. Completely different wheelhouse, and Aware has committed, and I was hired on the premise that, we would build out a team and we would dedicate resources to really filling the top of the funnel and getting that pipeline sort of bursting at the seams so the AEs could just have an abundant amount of resources kind of coming through. Yeah. That's the game.
And since you've been a leader before, what did you see as the key differentiators between like those A players and the B players?
So man, that's a good question. I would say that from my leadership lens, I would say that the A players have a very high amount of accountability and discipline. They take responsibility for the wins, the losses, they take responsibility for the mission, the execution. So they're taking ownership of all those things. And because they're disciplined, they're showing up every day, they're doing the right behaviors, they're doing the things necessary to be an A player. The B players, they're humans, right? We're all human. I'm not saying that, everybody is, this robot, but I would say the B players tend to be, a little bit less disciplined. Maybe it's somebody else's fault. It's marketing's fault. It's hey, marketing people, if you're listening, I'm not blaming you at all.
Yeah, no. Brian said that.
Right. Brian said that. But it is the, I think the characteristic of an A player to have those two things, the discipline and the accountability.
Yeah, I think that accountability and ownership is
right.
key, because it's just so easy to find someone else's fault.
I know. And you know what? I'm not exempt from any of that. These are ideals that I strive to be like. And so A players have weaknesses, and they can succumb to, maybe they have a big ego and they don't think it's their fault. But the reality is, we can all use a good reminder.
Yeah. And I think that caring part, that,
Yeah.
emotional attachment to winning in the right way, right? Because like at the SDR level, you can't really have it on every email and every call.
Right.
You'll burn yourself out. You'll bang your head against the wall.
Yeah.
But when you get to an enterprise level deal, that $1 million deal, you better care.
You better care.
Otherwise, it's going into the ditch, because it's so easy to. You're the guardrails of that deal.
Yeah.
Right. And you're constantly moving it along and keeping it on track.
Yeah. It's an amazing experience to be a part of something like that. Very grateful for that.
And how do you tell who to go after? I mean, the challenge with the startup is the territory is kind of undefined. There's not much historic data about who will really spend money for this versus just get excited over it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, thankfully, I think in general, it's hard for me to probably make that call. But I would say from my perspective, I've been fortunate enough to be, so Olive had been around since 2012. They had an executive team, sort of the infrastructure was there. They had just launched and rebranded to the name Olive, and they found a fit. Artificial intelligence was a very hard, very nebulous concept to explain to people in the healthcare system that have been doing things for years. The same way. With Aware, they've been around since 2017, so only 3 years. However, the leadership team there came from the actual space that we're selling into. So they have an intimate knowledge of the people that we're reaching out to, which is, CISO, directors of HR, IT, compliance, legal counsel, all those different stakeholders we've identified very early because of our founders had an intimate working knowledge of the product at hand. And so for me, it made the people that were in our marketing team has done a great job at identifying that. So working, I think, to answer your question, Brian, if I were to do that more broadly and answer it in a general way, I would say lean on the people that help make up the other divisions of your organization. Don't try to do it yourself. Ask for help. And see if they have any understanding.
And when you were hiring reps, what did you look for in reps?
Yeah, I would say that, again, I think it's the interview process is weird, right? Because you could interview people.
Fake it, yeah.
Yeah, and you could totally.
It's only an hour.
Yeah, right. I was lucky enough to have a great group. So the way that I found myself on your show is that I had 2 of my former SDRs promote my candidacy to be on your program. And it's because of them, not me. And so I think I was lucky in that we just found some great people. The character was high. They were competitive. They took ownership. They wanted to learn. They were curious. They had a drive. I'm not looking for anybody who feels entitled that they deserve anything. I just want people that are hungry,
Yeah. And how do you tell that?
I think, I don't know. I don't want to say that it's not a gut feel, but I like to dig into your personal background as opposed to your professional. I do like to understand, adversity is a big thing for me.
Yeah.
People that deal with a certain level of adversity and then come out the other side a little bit more refined than they were before
they had to have a roommate at Harvard?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly.
How'd you deal with that?
Yeah, it must have been tough. Tell me more about that.
What was his name? Zuckerberg? Oh.
Right, exactly. But I think the adversity thing is huge for me. If you haven't been through the fire, if you haven't been cleansed by fire at least once or twice in your life, then you and I probably don't have a whole lot in common unless you're just, world genius, the best at everything you do. If you have dealt with some adversity in your life, let me know. I want to hear about it because I want to work. I want to be in the foxhole with you, right? I want to fight those battles with you.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And why do you think they recommended you?
Probably for that reason. They felt they knew that I cared about them. they know that I cared about them. They know that I fought for them in certain situations around compensation, around promotion, around advancing. And because I had their best interest in mind, I always did with my team. Anybody that was on my team, I fought tooth and nail for them, and I always had their back. Why is that? Because I knew that if I could lay down for my team, my people, then that would move me forward as well. They wouldn't just leave me hanging out to dry.
Right.
I wasn't that leader that I didn't want to be.
Yeah.
You know, I was that guy that I wanted to be, right? So the guy who cared.
That's it. And I can always tell when I talk to a leader and they use the word resource instead of either the title or the person.
Yeah.
I go, resource?
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you talk to your daughter, my daughter, the resource? No, it's like,
yeah.
And I think that thing is critical because that's what builds trust and respect.
It does.
Right? Because if they don't feel you have their back and you're going to just cave and not protect them,
that's right.
They're not going to go the extra, yard for you.
That's right. And so you build so much dedication and loyalty there. And so what that means too, Brian, is that not only will they recommend you to get exposure like today, which thank you for that.
Big, yeah.
It's huge. But I would say that they'll also perform.
Yeah.
They come to work every day motivated to do that thing, not only to earn commission, but to get your approval and to get your support as a leader. And I think it's unbelievable. It's humbling.
It is critical because, I was interviewing a recruiter today and we had known each other forever. And we were talking about, what a reps want. And it's more than the company and the comp plan. It's a great manager because that's the person you work with every day. And the product can be okay. The comp plan can be okay. But if the manager's a jerk, it's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare. Yeah.
Cool. Hey, this has been a fun conversation. Where can people go to connect with you?
Well, they can connect with me on LinkedIn. So I'm out there on, most social media, websites. LinkedIn at /Pickworth79 is where you can find me. And you can also go to awarehq.com to check us out, see what we're doing. And I'd invite you to come along and see what's going on. You'll love it.